Winners and losers from the NFL Combine on this episode of OurSport. I'm Larry. I'll be your host. As always, John is doing the recording and editing and providing occasional commentary. So the Combine just ended as of this recording. Who are the big winners and losers? Let's start. The number one winner, I think, is Mekhi Becton. Becton is the offensive tackle out of Louisville. Now, we see in college programs they'll have heights and weights listed for players, and they'll exaggerate them for effect a lot of times. And he is a legitimate 6'7", 364. You get to the Combine, you can see how big they really are. And this is a man that is 6'7", 364. This is his actual size. And he's got all the traits you want an offensive tackle beside that. Some guys are big, not this big. Some guys are big, but their hands aren't long enough. I should say their hands aren't big enough, their arms aren't long enough. These things matter. Robert Gallery was like the number 2 overall pick in the draft out of Iowa to the Raiders. He was 6'7". His arms are too short. He just couldn't play football very well. He's okay as a guard. He was basically a busted tackle. Becton doesn't have that problem. Super long arms, huge catch-him-in hands. And then he goes to the Combine, and he displays his athleticism. He is a good athlete for a big man. He's a good athlete for about a 300-pounder. Now, they ran him in a 40-yard dash, and the 40 really doesn't matter for offensive linemen. It's the 10 you want. And he ran a 1.7710. That tells you his get-off, his ability to get off the snap. And when you look at his tape, I think Daniel Jeremiah from NFL Network called it an avalanche in the run game. I mean, the guy's just burying people. It's nice to see a guy who's got this kind of size, and he's going to play soft football. The guy is out there trying to hurt people, and he's succeeding. So this is a deep offensive line draft in terms of tackle. There's a lot of good ones here. But even within this group, I think Becton separated himself. And I can't see him getting past Carolina at 7. I think he goes before that. I think he goes to the Giants at 2. At 4. This is a top 5 pick on the offensive line. He has established himself to that level with this Combine showing. The biggest loser from the NFL Combine, future NFL passing defenses. What do we have in this draft? You have one elite edge rusher, and Chase Young out of Ohio State. You've got 2 elite corners, Jeffrey Okudah out of Ohio State and C.J. Henderson out of Florida.
A.J. Terrell.
And, my bad, A.J. Terrell out of Clemson. He's another one. So you have these guys to shore up your passing game. You really don't have a lot of good safeties in this draft. This is not a deep corner draft. The corners are stacked at the top. On the other side of the ball, here comes an arsenal of receivers and all different kinds. You want the big kids like T. Higgins and Colin Johnson. You want the track stars, the burners with the 4.3 speed, the Henry Ruggs of the world. You have so many ways to attack NFL defenses, and they're going to be way behind now, having to deal with all the receivers that are coming into this draft. It is so loaded. You're going to have NFL teams who have a second-round grade on a receiver going to be available for them in the 5th round. You're going to have guys with third-round grades on receivers going to be available for them in the 6th round. And you're going to have sleepers up and down the draft board, like, where did he come from? Well, he was just always a good player. He was just hidden in this immense amount of talent that's in this receiving core. This is something that we talked about in one of our earlier episodes. We said it was one of our college shows where we're halfway through the season. We're like storylines of the season. Man, there's so many good receivers in this league right now. And they're not done. There are more coming in next year. The second biggest winner from the Combine, Clemson's Isaiah Simmons. Simmons is an interesting kid. He's 6'3" and 5/8. Those 1/8 of an inch measurements matter. They wouldn't do them if they didn't matter. He's 238 pounds. And at Clemson, he was a jack of all trades. He kind of played mostly linebacker, but he'd play safety deep, he'd play safety short. He'd line up with his hand on the ground. He played 5 different positions. Versatile kid. And well regarded. People like him in terms of his character. And they spoke well of him at Clemson. Came here, wowed everybody he talked with. Said he had a humble nature, unpretentious nature. Everybody liked him in interviews. And then you go out there and you see his measurables. Again, like Becton, long arms, important for every position pretty much. Vertical jump through the roof, broad jump through the roof, and then he goes out there and he runs the fastest time of any linebacker at a 4.39 at 238 pounds. A 4.39. I've talked to John about that before. How announcers will say this guy runs a 4.440, and guys don't do that. There's not many guys when you look that really do that. You look at this combine, there are about 6 or 8 guys who did it, and that's about what it normally is. Usually they're playing corner. But here he is playing linebacker at almost 240 pounds, and he's doing this. So I think the key for Simmons, I kind of compare him to a former player, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick was a player for Alabama in her secondary, and he lined up all over. He would be a deep safety. He'd be a strong safety. He'd play nickel. He'd be a dime linebacker at times. And Nick Saban loved him. He's one of his favorite players to coach because he's a smart defensive back. Well, then Fitzpatrick gets to the league with the Dolphins, and they try doing the same things with him. You could probably do that with a player in year 3 or 4. You come in your first year in the NFL, and you're trying to learn all these different positions. It's too much. It's too much for him to do. The Dolphins traded him. Fitzpatrick goes to the Steelers. What do the Steelers do? They keep him at free safety. It's like, here's your position. Learn your one position, and he had a Pro Bowl year. You got to do the same with Simmons, at least in year 1. You got to find his best position and put him there. Now, his best position, he thinks, is weak side backer in a 4-3. I might tend to agree, but I have a bit of a different idea. If you watch him, he's a specimen. He looks great, and he's got a lot of length, but I don't know if he couldn't add maybe about 10 more pounds. I would put 10 pounds on him, and I'd put him at middle linebacker. I'd put him in the middle of the field. I'm not going to put him over here on one side of the field where you could run away from him. I'm going to put him in the middle of the field, have him call up my defense. He's smart enough. He's a smart kid, and you have to avoid him the whole game. He's going to be a pain in your the entire game. Almost like a Ray Lewis type of potential at the middle linebacker position if you put him there. Simmons, the second biggest winner at the Combine for us. Another big loser from the NFL Combine. You know, it's hard to point out individual players of note, at least any that are high profile. The safety group in particular didn't run very well. That whole collective unit right there, you could say, except for a couple of the small school guys. But how about the Pittsburgh Steelers when you think about it? Why? Why do you say that? Well, first of all, they don't have a first-round pick. Now, they got a good player, Minkah Fitzpatrick, but this is a draft you would love to have a first-round pick because this is a deep draft. This is one of the deepest drafts that I can remember. Kind of reminds me of the 2011 draft that had just so many good players. A.J. Green, Julio Jones, Tyron Smith, J.J. Watt, Cam Newton. All of those guys were in that draft. And this draft might be even deeper than that, looking at it. And they don't have a first-round pick. What else is going to go wrong for them? They got Joe Burrow in their division now. The Bengals have the number 1 overall pick, a man with high upside, compared in style to Tom Brady. Now, you don't know what he's going to play like till he actually plays in the league. But look where the Steelers are. They got Burrow coming into the league. They have they got to face him twice a year with the Bengals. They have an MVP and Lamar Jackson with the Ravens. They got to face him twice a year. He's not going anywhere. The Browns, sure enough, are a team they want to play twice. But look where the Steelers are. 2 years ago, they had Ben Roethlisberger, who wasn't quite as fat. They had Le'Veon Bell, and they had Antonio Brown pre-crazy, at least the manageable level crazy. Look where they are now. Look what they have compared to what they were a few years ago. And they're in a bad position. They're a team that could take a precipitous drop, and they're not going to be helped by Joe Burrow going to the Bengals from this Combine. Number 3 winner from the NFL Combine, Wisconsin running back Jonathan Taylor. Taylor's a big enough kid, 6'1", 217, and when you talk about productive, as a freshman he had over 1,900 yards. Sophomore and junior years he had over 2,000 yards. You're talking about, 6,000 rushing yards. 6,000 rushing yards in 3 years. And great kid. The guy had a scholarship offer from Harvard. So you know he's smart. You can tell when he talks. He is a smart kid. And he goes over here at 217 pounds, and he blazes a 4.41. This guy was a track champion in New Jersey. You could almost see this coming. I don't know if he was going to run this fast. And his hands measured at 9.5. Well, why is that important? Because Taylor's only flaw, I loved him in college for 3 years. Dude's great. But man, he fumbled a lot. He fumbled all the time. And I thought with his measurements, he'd have hands that were too small, 9 inches or under. Well, when you have hands that are 8 3/4 inches, 8 7/8 inches, your fumbling problems are not going to stop. That's just because of the proportions of your body, and those hands will betray you. You cannot do anything about it. But if you have hands that are this big, big enough. Get in a NFL strength and conditioning program. Get professional coaches to teach you technique. This was a real problem for Tiki Barber until Tom Coughlin changed his style. This was a problem for Adrian Peterson, and he got better at it. NFL coaches can help you with this. This is not like NFL quarterback accuracy, which really doesn't change much. So if you just shore that up for Taylor, I love Taylor. The dude's durable. The dude's a horse. I mean, you could just feed him the ball over and over again, and he's killing teams. He's putting 200-yard games on teams left and right. His skill set translates really well to the next level. The 4.41 and all the athletic measurements he had, he might have put himself in the first round and might have separated himself from some of these other NFL backs. Another loser from the NFL Combine. Man, it's the Auburn Tigers, because you can see some of the guys they got here, and we talked about it on earlier college episodes that we did. They had a rare group at defensive line. You had Derek Brown, 326 pounds to tackle. You had Marlon Davidson moving up and down the line, over 300 pounds. Nick Coe, 280 pounds. These were big dudes, and the announcers, I think it was, again, NFL's networks, Daniel Jeremiah talked about it when he watched them, and we talked about this too, their effort. They had maniacal effort is what he called it. I want to bring him up because that's the word he used, maniacal effort. Man, you want your defensive line to have maniacal effort. And finding 300-pounders who hustle, who have good character. You know, Brown was the guy who kind of got the band back together. He could have gone pro, and he decided, I'm going to stay for my senior year. And he talked Marlon Davis into staying with him. He talked Nick Coe into staying with him. Now, they didn't have the year that they really wanted. They beat Alabama, which that's always good by Auburn standards. But these guys helped that program so much. Their character, their unity, they were good kids as well as great players. And you can't replace that if you're Auburn. I know you're an SEC team. I know you're going to be a top 5 recruiting team year after year. But to have guys that big and play that well and have that kind of character, Auburn is definitely going to take a step back on the defensive line next year. Conversely, a winner from the NFL Combine, and we're talking about a college program, the Clemson Tigers. When you talk about Isaiah Simmons, they raved about his character, like we said in interviews, and he mentioned specifically how indebted he was to Clemson, the university, how much he felt like that university helped him. You look back a few years ago, and their great defensive tackle, Christian Wilkins, he did something similar, really similar to what Derek Brown did at Auburn. He could have gone pro, and he's like, I'm going to stay. And he convinced almost all his defensive line teammates, which were going to go pro, to stay with him. They benefited more than Auburn. They won the national championship doing that. But if you're a fan of Clemson, you've got to feel great, because there's something really, really great in that culture there. There's something that they're doing extremely right. Now, if you're a great player in America and a high school player, and we live in Atlanta, let's pretend that John, my son, is a 5-star quarterback, and that's pretend.
God, really? Wow. Jeez. I mean, I guess it's true, but like...
Plucky walk-on thing. Anyway, so we're right between Alabama and Clemson for the most part. And I'm telling you, man, like, you could have the same level of success possibly at Alabama as you could at Clemson. The difference is, if you go to Clemson, you know they work hard if you know behind the scenes what's going on. You know they put in the work, but Nick Saban's a miserable prick. Why the you want to play for Nick Saban?
Tell the Tua story.
Right? And what's the Tua story?
The championship game where he takes the sack.
Oh, yeah. Tua Tagovailoa talked about it, where the game where he beats Georgia in the national title. After the game, Nick Saban is still upset about the sack he took to make it 2nd and 26 after they won the national title.
The play before he won the game.
The play before he won the game. Who the wants to deal with that? Honestly, who wants to deal with that crap? You see Dabo Swinney? They beat South Carolina State. They're dancing in the locker room. Hey, no program gets to these heights does it with a lot of sacrifice and a lot of work. But you've got water slides over there at Clemson and waterfalls, and they have all the things to spoil you like Alabama does, and you can have fun. You can like your coach, and it says something really good about that culture that dudes talk about it after they leave. They identify with it so much, and they kind of adore that university. You could tell Clemson's not going away. They're going to be good for a long time. Another loser from the NFL Combine, the Michigan Wolverines. First of all, they had the second most players here. Behind national championship LSU, titled Ohio State, they had more players here than Alabama or than Georgia, teams who had far better years. And when you look at some of these players, when you look back, when you follow recruiting, Mekhi Becton, they got in on him late, and they could not convince him to go to Michigan. He goes to Louisville. Dever Duvernay, the great receiver out of Texas, they were in on him for a while, could not convince him. He goes to Texas. Now, this happens a lot where you lose recruiting battles to teams, but let's talk about Isaiah Wilson from Georgia. For a year and a half, it was considered a Michigan-Notre Dame battle, and on signing day, he just all of a sudden announces for Georgia. Just out of the blue, and then he says, I've always been a Georgia fan. Now, you know, some of us who are a little suspicious might wonder how guys like Ham all of a sudden take a possible Laquan Treadwell route. And Michigan complains about the cheaters in college football. They can't keep up with the cheaters. Well, if that's true, if these teams are cheating, and I'm not saying these teams are cheating, because I don't have proof that I could give you, well then Michigan doesn't cheat well enough. They're not going to compromise their academic integrity, the reputation of the program. I understand that. But this is why they're always going to be a 9-3 team, and they're never going to be a 12-0 team. You got to cheat a little bit. Your bagman got to get involved a little bit, alleged bagman, to get some of these boys. You can't let Isaiah Wilson at the last minute, you know, have maybe a bag of cash pull up somehow, allegedly, and commit to somebody out of the blue on you like that and be surprised by it. There are a ton of players at this combine that were Michigan leans, near Michigan commits, silent commits, and got the rug pulled out of them and surprised the Wolverines. And John is here with me. We're talking more about the combine. All right, out of the blue, who's your favorite player at this combine?
There were a lot of guys who had big wins at this combine, as he talked about. My favorite player overall was Isaiah Simmons, I think. I mean, the guy who actually competed in the combine. My favorite player in this draft is probably Joe Burrow. But at this combine, the guy who I think improved their stock the most was Isaiah Simmons.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll tell you who I don't like, who I'm not a fan of. Any one of these dudes, and this is a, hey, you kids, get off my lawn moment. Any one of these dudes that are completely healthy and are like, no, I just don't want to compete. Because that's what it is to me. It's competition. Now, I know Chase Young is going to be like the number 2 pick in a draft, and I know he's not falling out of the top 5. But it's just, here's all the elite competition. You have everybody competing with, and you're on the same stage. Go out there. Andrew Luck did it. Andrew Luck knew he was going to be a number 1 pick. He's like, I'm going out there. I'm competing. Yeah.
Other than Tua. Tua is the exception because
Tua was hurt.
Injured, or at least,
right.
To the point where he probably didn't want to re-injure it or anything like that. But.
Right. But, yeah, that's one thing that kind of really gets on my nerves.
I mean, and there are guys who will skip the combine and still do well in the league. I mean, it's
it's likely.
Test.
It's likely.
Yeah. But then why does it get on your nerves so much if there are guys who will skip the combine and still do great?
Well, because I'm a fan and I'm selfish and I care more about me than what's good for them. And I mean, they put this thing on primetime. All you got to do is run 40 yards. You put it on primetime for you. You can go out there and showcase yourself now.
And there were guys who fell and pulled hamstrings and did different things like
Okuda
okay. had
like
a scare.
Deion Sanders now. Yeah, Deion sounds like he's got to go to the fucking emergency room because he had a little boo-boo. Come on, sit down. Don't play no more.
I'm playing devil's advocate here. I do agree with you to a majority extent. But, Okuda had a scare where he fell on his head and neck.
Right.
And he is undoubtedly probably going to be
because
top 5
one
pick.
person from the last 9 combines we saw on TV fell and hurt his neck. Nobody should ever run ever again.
So then what's the percentage then? 0.001%.
Of what? Being injured?
Yeah, because then out of the past 9 combines, one person gets.
Okay,
hurt
well, there was
0.001%.
a player from Washington. I think it was Sidney Jones. They had a private workout for him. The Eagles did, and I think he tore his Achilles.
Yeah.
You're not gonna do private workouts either.
No, I'm just saying, like,
You
know,
You wanna get drafted?
would you take a 0.01% chance to be out of $100 million?
I take a 0.01% chance to make $100 million.
But they're not gonna.
Okay.
See, that's not that's not the question, because
C.J. Henderson had a great combine.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, on some boards, that corner from Florida is rated higher than Okuda.
Yeah.
On some boards, maybe depending on system, maybe AJ Terrell is. I don't know. I wouldn't think so, but it's like. Of course, I can't imagine defensive end rated higher than Chase Young.
Yeah.
So, but you could see on some board, out of 32 NFL boards, at least one team will have Justin Herbert over Joe Burrow on their board, and more than one team will have Tua Tagovailoa over Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's.
Yeah.
But
But again, wait. Now we're talking about Burrow and Young. Okay, they don't want to run. That's fine. But you have guys who are going to be the 17th pick in a draft, or the 31st pick in a draft, or the 54th pick in a draft, and they're healthy, and they're like, I don't want to run. I want to go to my pro day. Go to your pro day. You're a receiver. Go to your pro day. Have a bad day. Go run your 4.60 because you had a bad. You didn't get enough sleep the night before. Go have that in your pro day. How are you going to recover then? Right.
Yeah, I agree with you to the majority of extent. I was playing devil's advocate.
Right.
I agree with you about most of this, especially when you have guys who are like not really top tier players, especially like skipping bowl games.
Right.
Like, I mean, there are guys who are 3rd round picks that skip bowl games. Guys who are undrafted that skip bowl games.
Karan
Higdon out of Michigan. Half you people don't know who Karan Higdon is. Karan Higdon was a back Michigan had for like 3 years. He played really, really recently.
A captain.
But
A captain
he was
to
a
skip
captain
the
of the
bowl
team.
game.
He
Right.
was like, good back, not great. Probably going to go 4th, 5th round. Where did he end up going?
Not drafted.
Not drafted. He skipped his bowl game.
As a captain of the team, yeah. And we're just like, really, we're fans. We're just huge fans of the sport, of both sports, college football and the NFL. And it's just selfishness. We've seen these guys in college for their whole careers. It's like, all right, man, how are they going to run compared to the other guys? And it's really more of like fan venting. I'm sure we're not alone in that.
Yeah, and it's also like you're laying down. You want to see guys compete, right? It is a little bit of a test of character. You want to see guys compete, but there are guys with good character that skip. Christian McCaffrey, great guy in the locker room,
Great
from
kid.
what I can tell, and he skipped his bowl game, and that was just because he knew he was going to go high. And so I don't know how big of a deal it is really, but
Okay. So, do you have a player beside Isaiah Simmons that you like? Another favorite player? Somebody I haven't talked about that you're intrigued by, or
I really like Duvernay.
From Texas.
I thought Duvernay had a great season.
he's talking about the Devin Duvernay, wide receiver from Texas. Yep.
I thought he had a great season. He made some spectacular plays. He has great hands, and I wasn't expecting him to run as fast as he did. He ran like a 4.40 flat, 4.39, something like that.
High school track star.
He's really, really good, and I didn't expect that at all.
I think he had 100 catches this year. Yeah, and not like they didn't have guys around him. They had Colin Johnson on the other side, a receiver, and that was a good receiving core. How many games did Texas win this year? 7?
6 and something. I don't know who they played in their bowl.
Yeah, they killed some dog meat team in their bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, crap.
Okay, who else? Who else is a favorite of yours from the Combine?
You
Who else are the
all
guys
these
who are like,
favorites,
man, you have a guy you don't like? You have a guy that you're
favorite. I got a favorite.
Okay,
And I'm gonna pick on you here. So we did our all American team for college, and we had different linebackers.
I know who you're gonna say.
We had different linebackers.
I know who you're gonna say.
You had Evan Weaver, and I had
Weaver.
Kenneth Murray
Right.
at my linebacker. And you didn't like Kenneth Murray coming out of college, out of Oklahoma.
No.
And Kenneth Murray had a great combine. He improved his stock by a lot. He was 6'1", 240, which is bigger than I thought he'd be.
Yeah.
And then he went out, he ran well, he tested really, really well.
He actually ran at the
boards.
Combine. Yeah.
He has big enough hands, long enough arms. He really, really did well.
Loved him. One team said it was the best interview they had at the whole Combine. The dude's dad is a pastor. The dude's mom is a retired police officer. Culture changer.
Lot
Tone
going.
setter in the locker room.
Lot going for him.
Yeah.
And then You had Evan Weaver, who I'm not knocking on. He had a great college season, but he did not have a great combine.
No,
he ran really slow.
4.76.
Yeah, that's it. Middle linebacker, you got to at least have some kind of burst, a step in the right direction, because you're not going to be on the side of the field to play. You got to run to where it's going, right? You're in the middle, so he could be a guy who studies a lot of film, knows what the offense is doing before they're doing it, and always takes a step in the right direction. But in that case, you always got to be right because you don't got any recovery speed.
Well,
you can't come back the other way.
Clearly, he had a lot of that at Cal. Weaver did. He had a ton of this ability to know what the offense was doing because he studied them. Now, that means that he could be the next Zach Thomas. Zach Thomas from the Dolphins was like this, a 5th-round pick. Dude looked like Barney Rubble. And he reminds me of Weaver a ton. But Zach Thomas was 20 years ago, and I've been thinking lately, does that guy even play in today's NFL? Does that guy who runs slow but studies a lot with the amount NFL offense have become so sophisticated, the staffs have become so big, they spend so much time into it that they can maybe negate this as a strength of yours. That your biggest strength is, when you're Evan Weaver, is your ability to know your opponent and know what's coming. And I'm trying to think of a player is there a modern player that's like this now? I can think of Sam Mills.
Sean Lee.
Sean Lee's more talented than he is. And Luke Kuechly was like this, but Luke Kuechly was a lot more talent. Luke Kuechly was legit.
Luke Kuechly's like, if you had a lot of talent and you still knew where the offense was going to go.
That's why he was the best linebacker in football.
Yeah, for a long time.
And so I wonder if that just doesn't work in the NFL anymore. And that used to work 20, 30 years ago. All these guys who would study and know it was coming. And now with Evan Weaver, he may not have a chance in this league because of that.
Yeah. Sean Lee is the only example I can think of off the top of my head.
Cowboys homer.
I mean...
You're right, though.
Yeah.
You're right, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, nothing comes to mind, actually.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I haven't really thought about that.
So he's right. Kenneth Murray was his boy. Murray looks great on and off the field, and he looks like what a modern NFL linebacker is. And Evan Weaver looks like a dinosaur out there.
Hello, and thank you as always for watching this episode of OurSport and all the other episodes that you tune in on. If you like this video, leave a like down below. If you want to see it whenever we upload, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. If you want to see more what we're about here on OurSport, we have an inaugural episode detailing everything that we do here and what we're all about. If you want to come into contact with us, we'll have ways that you can in the description box. We have a Gmail, a Twitter account, and as always, if you want us to cover a topic, whether it be player, coach, team, whatever it is, you can leave it down in the comment section, and we'll be sure to get to that in one of our upcoming episodes. So as always, thank you for watching. Bye.